All right, friends, brace yourselves because you will be shocked, I say, to learn that the Trump White House has reportedly threatened a media organization with a federal probe because they dared to publish a critical report about Trump's dipshit son, Don Jr. Yeah. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, the authoritarianness of Donald Trump continues to manifest. We're going to look at 3 articles, okay? One summarizing and then the 2 articles in question in the first, okay? So as Mediaite reports, Trump White House reportedly threatens Politico Business Insider over critical report about Don Jr. The Trump White House is reportedly considering a probe into the parent company behind Politico and Business Insider after the latter published a report this week comparing Donald Trump Jr.'s business ventures to those of Hunter Biden. According to a report published by The Bulwark on Tuesday, the White House is, quote, sending aggressive signals about launching a potential federal investigation into Axel Springer, the German media conglomerate that owns both outlets. On May 6, Business Insider's Bethany McLean published a report that was headlined, Don Jr. is the new Hunter Biden. We're going to read that, okay? The Business Insider report apparently angered the White House, according to the Bulwark's Will Sommer. We're going to read that one, too. So we're going to read the thing that pissed the Trump administration off and the report about the Trump administration being pissed off. Okay, we're going to do our homework on this one. I want to bring this to your attention, just give you a snapshot. We've already seen signs that the Trump administration is seeking to punish its political opponents, both in actual politics like the Democratic Party, but also law firms and media organizations that they don't like. So this is par for the authoritarian course. Okay, so let's look at that Business Insider article. Don Jr. is the new Hunter Biden, how America's first son is cashing in on his dad's presidency. Last November, only 6 days after his father was elected president, Don Jr. made a career move that, on the surface at least, seemed a bit odd. He became a partner in a small investment startup called 1789 Capital, which is based in Palm Beach, Florida, 2 miles from Mar-a-Lago. At that point, 1789 was a microscopic player in the world of venture capital. It had raised less than $200 million, and it hadn't made any investments beyond leading a group that put $15 million into Tucker Carlson's new media company. Its goal, according to its founders, is to create a parallel economy, investing in anti-woke businesses that align with MAGA values. Ever since Trump joined 1789, its portfolio has begun to blossom. Despite its tiny size, the firm has been granted shares in several coveted offerings, including Elon Musk's SpaceX. The shares, which are widely viewed as an almost certain home run, are essentially an insider deal. To participate in the offering, you typically have to receive an invitation from somebody already in the club. In addition, 1789 has invested in Musk's artificial intelligence company, xAI, as well as a handful of startups that have received or are vying for contracts from the Defense Department. Almost overnight, a VC firm involving the president's son has become a significant beneficiary of the federal bureaucracy long derided by Donald Trump as the swamp. There's nothing wrong with an investment company making bets based on its connections. That's an integral part of the VC game. And there's no evidence that any of 1789's deals break laws prohibiting favoritism to individual contractors. But given their potential for creating a conflict of interest, the firm's investments have alarmed Washington insiders familiar with the process. What's more, the Trump administration's lack of transparency, particularly around the moves being made by Musk and Doge, makes it impossible to tell if Trump's family is improperly making money by funneling government business to companies it invests in. Quote, this certainly raises serious concerns about the appearance of corruption because Trump's family is benefiting, says Laura Dickinson, a law professor at George Washington University who has served as special counsel for the Defense Department. Quote, and when you look at this in the context of arbitrary cuts to other programs, it raises questions about whether preferential treatment is being given to family and others who curry favor with Trump. It's not just legal experts who have concerns about the money flowing into Don Jr. One veteran Wall Street investor who has personally reviewed 1789's deals says they enable the president's son to profit from the administration's actions, even if no contractors are given preferential treatment. Quote, it's a way for Mar-a-Lago to get paid, says the investor who spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of retribution from the Trump administration. Both the Trump Organization and 1789 declined requests for comment. One of 1789's biggest bets in its push to monetize MAGA has come courtesy of Musk. According to Bloomberg, the firm has invested more than $50 million in SpaceX and XAI, the kind of opportunity usually reserved for deep-pocketed insiders, not tiny funds with no track record. The move comes at a time when the Trump administration, which has empowered Musk and Doge to redirect vast swaths of federal spending, has reportedly been moving to channel billions in taxpayer dollars to SpaceX for the use of its Starlink satellite system. In addition, the company has been awarded a $5.9 billion contract with the U.S. Space Force to launch critical national security payloads. The deal, announced April 4th, makes SpaceX the Pentagon's leading launch provider, surpassing an industry rival owned by Boeing and Lockheed. That means as SpaceX benefits from government contracts, 1789 and the president's son stand to share the wealth. Hella corrupt so far, isn't it? Especially with SpaceX. Interesting. 1789 is also investing in other companies, being awarded lucrative defense contracts. And Durrell, a highly regarded defense technology firm, is now raising up to $2.5 billion. The backers of the new fundraising round have not been revealed, but I was able to confirm from multiple sources that 1789 is among the investors. And Durrell has thrived under the Trump administration. In February, the company won a $22 billion defense contract to provide soldiers with augmented reality goggles. A few weeks later, it beat out 9 competitors to win a $642 million contract to build a network of anti-drone defenses for military bases. Given the company's prospects, investors have been fighting to get shares of it. Axiom Space, a Houston company that's seeking a contract with NASA to build a successor to the International Space Station, has been in discussions with 1789 to raise at least $100 million in fresh equity. And in January, 1789 led a $60 million fundraising round for Firehawk Aerospace, a Dallas tech company focused on supplying the military with 3D printed rocket fuel. In April, Firehawk landed a $1.2 million defense contract to conduct a study of its manufacturing systems. That month, the company posted a photo on LinkedIn of its founder posing with General James Rainey, the leader of Army Futures Command. With them was the founder of Aon Industrial, another defense contractor in 1789's portfolio, who had just received a weapons contract from Rainey's command. Quote, "It creates a very complex ethics situation," says Scott Amy, the general counsel at the Project on Government Oversight, a leading watchdog group. Quote, "If the son of the president is benefiting from these deals, even if there's a few degrees of separation, is there a level playing field? We just don't know." Don Jr.'s investments are a long way from the days when Washington got worked up over Jimmy Carter's brother marketing his own beer brand. But I'm old enough to remember when it was completely shocking that the president's brother was selling Billy beer, says Nell Minow, the vice chair of Value Edge Advisors, who has served as a government attorney at the EPA, the Office of Management and Budget, and the Justice Department. Quote, "Back then, there was no suggestion of a connection to access or policy or contracts. It was just considered unseemly. With 1789, she adds, quote, "We've gone to a whole new level. This is a flashing red light of conflict." Don Jr. is far from a passive bystander in 1789. According to Politico, he and his fellow partners at the investment firm have launched an invite-only club called the Executive Branch that will cost more than $500,000 to join. Located in Georgetown, the high-end club will enable business and tech moguls to schmooze with the administration's insiders behind closed doors, and simultaneously creating a source of potential deals for 1789. Even some insiders who have worked closely with Trump and his family see such efforts as improper. Quote, "What they're doing is selling access to the president via the back door," says someone who knows the Trumps well. Quote, "Imagine, for 1 second, if Hunter Biden had opened this club while Joe Biden was president. The Republicans would be screaming not just for his head, but a complete and total dismemberment of his body. It's beyond hypocritical." I'll stop right there. 100%. The MAGA Republican movement has a lifeblood of hypocrisy. It needs hypocrisy to function. Trump, Don Jr., the MAGA movement collectively cannot function if they are held to the same standard that they try to impose on Democrats, because Donald Trump is objectively morally inferior to every Democrat. He's more incompetent, more corrupt. It manifests, and unfortunately, Don Jr. is running down that path with him. Don Jr. is far more corrupt than Hunter Biden. Donald Trump is far more corrupt than Joe Biden. But they don't care because it's not about principle. It's about power and using principle to leverage and get more power. So let's resume. Don Jr.'s involvement in 1789 bears an eerie resemblance to what Trump blasted Hunter Biden for doing, trading on his father's name to win lucrative business deals with countries like Ukraine and China. During the 2020 campaign, Don Jr. offered to debate Biden, insisting that Hunter's nepotism far outstripped his own. Quote, "I'm not going to say I haven't benefited from my father's last name, just like Hunter Biden did. That'd be foolish to say that, but I haven't benefited from my father's taxpayer-funded office." Stupid. Now, as a freshly minted venture capitalist, Don Jr. is explicitly gearing up to cash in on the next 4 years of his father's presidency. In the 3 months since Trump was inaugurated, 1789 has raised some $500 million. According to Bloomberg, the firm is aiming to collect $1 billion for its first fund by the middle of this year and another $3 billion to $5 billion for a second fund next year. Whatever the legality of 1789's investments, it appears that Trump's oldest son stands to profit handsomely from the federal contracts his father's administration is handing out. Even if there's no pro quo involved, there's still plenty of quid. Yikes. Very harrowing, very sinister. So, that was the report, which apparently triggered the Trump administration, the Trump White House. Let's look at the report confirming that. Trump White House sharpens its knives for Politico's owner. The Trump administration is sending aggressive signals about launching a potential federal investigation into the company that owns Politico and Business Insider as retaliation for an article scrutinizing Don Jr.'s business interests. In a Tuesday night story little noticed outside of right-wing media, Breitbart reporter and Trump administration favorite Matthew Boyle wrote that the White House was furious that at a German media conglomerate, Axel Springer. At issue was a Business Insider story entitled Don Jr. is the new Hunter Biden. In the 1,500-word long item, reporter Bethany McLean focused on Don Jr.'s venture capitalist fund, 1789 Capital, primarily via a collection of quotes from some ethics experts and an anonymous Wall Street investor concerned that the fund could present conflict of interest. The story was relatively anodyne, certainly in a world where the president is poised to receive a $400 million luxury jet from a foreign country and boosting a meme coin by offering White House access. And Business Insider isn't the first media outlet to compare Don Jr. to Hunter Biden. So let's be clear. This story that we just read is a big deal, but as Bulwark notes, relative to other Trump corruption, not so much. Just want to clarify that. This is still legitimate. This is still a thing that people should be upset about, but they're making the point that what Trump is doing everywhere else is just bonkers by comparison. But we'll continue. But Boyle wrote that the Business Insider article had opened up Axel Springer to a massive federal review of its ownership, quoting an unnamed outside White House advisor as calling Politico and Business Insider a, quote, German influence operation. Quote, "Talk about your all-time backfires," Boyle wrote. "Instead of landing a major hit on the president's son, a German-backed publication has drawn massive federal attention onto its foreign ownership structure and lobbying activities before the federal government. The idea that the White House is now only now discovering that 2 major digital outlets are owned by a German company, purchases that were well covered in the business press at the time, is ridiculous. Less so is the possibility that Boyle's piece raises, that the Trump administration might retaliate against Axel Springer. Boyle then goes on to quote an unnamed White House official agreeing with his theory that Axel Springer is under the gun. The official suggested that the Business Insider story could amount to, quote, illegal foreign political meddling. The defining characteristic of the Trump 2.0 administration has been its overt attempts to use the tools of government on, and threats of lawsuits against, major news outlets. It's often worked. Networks have made multi-million-dollar settlements with Trump. Newspapers like the Washington Post have dramatically revamped their editorial pages in an apparent attempt to curry favor. A global media giant, Axel Springer has worked hard to build inroads with Trump. The company is, by the standards of journalism, pretty conservative. Axel Springer employees in Europe are required to take a pledge to support Israel. And in 2020, the CEO asked some of his employees to gather and pray for Trump's reelection. But any goodwill it had with the administration is at risk of dissipating. On Wednesday night, right around the time the Breitbart story ran, well-connected Trump World lobbying firm Ballard Partners filed a lobbying disclosure announcing they had dropped Axel Springer as a client, a move first reported by the website Florida Politics. The contract, which just started last month, had already earned Ballard $80,000, but the firm was apparently willing to forego it over anger with both inside the Business Insider story and because of the Politico reporting that the lobbying firm had been iced out of the administration. Quote, the Business Insider piece on Don seemed to be such a gratuitous attack there was no way the firm could continue in good faith to represent Axel Springer, a source close to Ballard told Boyle in a follow-up article. The White House, Axel Springer, Politico and Business Insider and Ballot Partners all didn't respond to my requests for comment. This is not the first series of bad stories that Axel Springer's had to navigate during the Trump administration. A bizarre confluence of events earlier this year inspired a conspiracy theory on the right that USAID had been secretly funding Politico. In reality, the agency, like others, had been paying for pricey government subscriptions to Politico's premium offerings, which it promptly canceled when word got out. But the latest round of controversy represents a much bigger potential threat. The loss of a small portion of Politico Pro revenue is minor compared to the price tag of defending against a potentially drawn-out government investigation into whether your organization amounts to a foreign peddling influence operation. Already, a number of Trump world figures are piling on after the Breitbart's article, suggesting a groundswell of support for just that type of investigation. But wow, is this true? Axel Springer, right-wing figure Jack Posobiec posted on X. Looking bad. Time to drop the hammer on Axel Springer, wrote former Trump advisor Jason Miller. Why has this article in particular earned so much pushback? Based on Boyle's article, McLean and Business Insider's unforgivable sin appears to have been comparing Don Jr. to Joe Biden's famously troubled son. Boyle spent much of the story disputing the idea that Don Jr. and his businesses are anything like Hunter Biden, calling the comparison ludicrous. First-term Trump official Cliff Sims agreed, telling Boyle that comparing Biden's scion to the Trump scion and Business Insider is a disgrace to journalism. So there you have it, folks. Read you the summary and the two articles in question. Business Insider publishes a report diving into a pretty shady situation, certainly looks corrupt, certainly looks like there are conflicts of interest involving Donald Trump Jr. And as a consequence, the Trump White House is apparently preparing at the bare minimum to target the conglomerate behind Politico and Business Insider because they didn't like the story. Just another example of the Trump administration threatening and preparing to use outright direct government influence to silence its critics. Terrible stuff. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.